It's time to awaken your inner traveler and zip around the world as money is sent to the people who rely on it. This is Money Travels, presented by Visa. I'm Indre Viscontis. Clove Bakery is an American bakery in Paris, bringing a little taste of the USA to the second arrondissement. And like many other small businesses in Paris, they're already preparing for the onslaught of customers that will come during an Olympic summer.
We're really in a nice walking area, so we have lots of tourists and foot traffic. We specialize in all of the American classics. Red Velvet has become one of our best sellers. The French didn't know what it was, but they've quickly accepted it and adore it. So generally, starting after Bastille Day, July 14th, through September, the city empties out. It becomes a ghost town. We ourselves normally are closed during this period because generally the people you find in the city are American tourists, and they come here to eat croissants and macaroons and all the French specialties, not to get what they can get back home. But given with the Olympics, we will be here for that. Businesses are anticipating huge sales during that time, so a lot of the businesses are making an exception this year and staying open. We already see a lot of changes around the city. They're closing off lots of streets, and they've been building like crazy, so transportation has already become more of a nightmare. We're planning on doing more cookies and bars and stuff people can easily walk away with because everybody will be walking around the city. We're also planning on doing ice cream based treats, which we normally don't do because we're normally closed during the hotter period. So we're going to have ice cream sandwiches and ice cream whoopie pies.
Welcome to Money Travels, presented by Visa. On this podcast, we follow the money as it zips around the world, enabling our fellow humans to survive and thrive. And we talk to the experts who are building the tools that will transform the next generation of money movement. Small and mid-sized businesses or enterprises are often overlooked in conversations about money movement, even though they are among the main drivers of employment growth and change, especially in parts of the world that involve developing countries. Their economies are mainly powered by SMBs, and SMBs are often the catalysts for innovation. So what are their unique needs in the money movement space? And how is Visa Direct meeting those needs? In this final episode of Season 2 of Money Travels, we're going to talk to Jaspreet Singh, head of consumer-funded flows at Visa Direct. And we'll also give you a recap of the highlights of the season. But first, let's go back to Clove Bakery's co-founder Beth Beji again and hear about the challenges that SMBs face.
When I first came to France, a lot of places didn't accept credit cards even, and now you have places that don't accept cash. We don't have many people paying in cash anymore. The banking system is quite different in France than it is in America. They don't have the same credit card system like we have, where you can have a huge amount of debt and you pay minimums each month. You pay $100 a month, you pay $200 a month. If they extend you a line of credit, you pay it back in full at the end of the month, which is difficult for small businesses to maintain. As any small business, you always try to have a reserve. I think you can anticipate that things will go wrong at any given time. The business model with small businesses are fragile. There's always different things happening since COVID with stock and supplies and inventory and staffing issues and you name it. So during the busy months, which are the fall times and the spring, we try to save a little bit in case anything were to go wrong.
So to hear how Visa Direct is meeting the challenges that small business owners like Beth face, let's talk to Jaspreet Singh, head of consumer-funded flows at Visa Direct. Let's talk about small businesses. On this show at Money Travels, we've had a couple of people come on who really run big corporations, big fintechs, et cetera. But of course, small businesses are a huge part of the economy. In fact, according to a recent Forbes article, in the United States alone, there's more than 30 million small businesses. And the majority of those actually only have one employee. So can you give us an overview of this space and your work within it?
This space is very fascinating for us for multiple reasons, right? Like you mentioned, US alone accounts for more than 30 million SMBs. If you look globally, it's 400 million SMBs. Now, SMBs come in different shapes and sizes, and we classify them based on the revenue that they generate. So how we look at Visa is the SMBs that tend to have less than $1 million in revenue. We classify them as micro and small businesses. And more than 1 million to 20 million, we classify them as mid-market or mid-sized businesses. And then 20 million to 50 million is like larger SMBs. Now you're spot on, like majority of the SMBs in the US, in fact, like 90% of the SMBs as per US Bureau of Economic Analysis data, comprise of these individual and small or micro businesses, right, with one employee. And if you look at the overall market size, of the B2B payments, it's $145 trillion in payments. And of that, 45 trillion is represented by SMBs. So huge opportunity. And when you look at it from payments perspective. Now, the interesting thing about these smaller SMBs is that, a lot of transactions that they're doing, they form, I think, the majority of the payment transactions that are happening in this space, like around 90% of domestic transactions which are sent on the send side, and 65% of transactions, cross-border transactions that are sent by these 90% of the small or micro SMBs that we're talking about. And on the receive side also, they receive like 53% of the transactions are received by these smaller SMBs as well. So the scope is pretty big. And it's a very, very, I would say when it comes to payments, a nascent space, especially when it comes to real-time payments. So it's very exciting for us.
Yeah. So what do you think are some of the needs of these SMBs? Do they differ in terms of those? I'm sure they do, those buckets, small, mid-size, and large. And are there trends that are bubbling up within those buckets that Visa plays a role in?
Yeah, absolutely. So if you look at the SMBs, typically, if you look at any SMB, their pain points tend to be kind of similar in nature. When it comes to smaller SMBs, the pain points tend to be more around, slowness in speed of receiving payments, right? They need the payments faster. As you go up the value chain, the necessity for that funds to be received in an immediate fashion goes down slightly, because the larger the size of the SMB, the nature of the payments that they are receiving or sending tends to be more recurring. So they have kind of an idea as to when and how they need to make the payment or receive the payments. When it comes to smaller SMBs, most of the business is based on ad hoc payments. So they don't have recurring streams of payments. 1 week, their business might be high, so they may be expecting more payments. The other week could be low, so less payments. So for them, cash management is really, really important. Then when you look at across the board, all the businesses, cross-border tends to be, a big pain point. So buyers and suppliers are spread out across the globe. In certain cases, the buyer could be a supplier also. So when it comes to cross-border payments, there is a clear gap that we see because the SMBs is that there's a lack of transparency when it comes to payments. The Forex fees is something that they're always confused about. And then the speed also, right? It matters. When you look at the receive side markets, let's say there is a supplier in the Asia Pac, they have, there's a lot of prevalence of wallets in that area. So they would want to receive payments from the buyers in their expected or preferred method of receiving those payments, which is a wallet, right? Mm-hmm. So not many platforms today provide that service, right? So that is another pain point. How do they receive the payments with a payment method of their choice? And today they lack that choice.
One of the things that we love to do on Money Travels is to talk about regional differences in whatever topic that we're covering that episode. And so here, can you describe some regional differences, maybe with some specific examples where the needs of SMBs differ region to region in terms of money movement?
Well, I think, as I said, like the differences depend on the region and the payment infrastructure you're dealing with, right? If you look at US, real-time payments is still bubbling up, right? It's a new thing. When you look at Asia Pac, it's more of in some countries, it's a cash-based economy, and more it's kind of going towards the wallet side of things. So when it comes to domestic payments, the problem for the small businesses to have access to that cash flow is not as big because they can receive the payments, day in and day out using the wallets. Now, there could be other challenges that they face. Now, if they're accessing that much cash, they have cash on hand, then, how do they manage that cash? Secondly, the cross-border side again. Now, as I mentioned earlier, now they want to receive the payments as well, because in most of those countries, typically they are the suppliers rather than the buyers. So they would want the buyers to pay them in their expected method or preferred method of payment, which they cannot today. So the problem for them is more of a cross-border problem and less of a domestic problem. Whereas in the US, the domestic is still relevant. The problem is all across. They have to send the payments cross-border. They need the cross-border accessibility. It's many a times very expensive to send the payments. And then in the domestic space as well, the real-time payments are not that proliferated yet.
In the US, it might be easier for merchants to get access to their earnings through merchant settlements. But that kind of real-time access is not as prevalent in other parts of the world.
With Visa Direct, we have built a huge ecosystem. We have built a product platform that can serve many of the needs, whether it's domestic or cross-border, for these type of clients. Now, Visa Direct started off as a card-based platform, but over time, we have also expanded into account-based transactions and, bank account-based transactions, and then also direct transactions to wallets. So if you look at the overall Visa Direct platform, now our reach has expanded to almost 8.5+ billion endpoints, which includes accounts, cards, and wallets. So now you look at that context and then try to fit it into different geographies. Now, if a US SMB wants to send funds to any country where there is more of a wallet prevalence, you could do that using Visa Direct in real time. If there is an account prevalence in the specific geography, that can be served using Visa Direct account rails. And then card is already there and has been there for a long period of time. So how we have built the platform is that now we are trying to cover all of our bases and making sure that with one integration into Visa, our partners are able to serve all of those needs across different segments of their clients.
And as you've mentioned, micro businesses or single employee, even under the $1 million mark, they often probably act more or behave more like a consumer might rather than a small business. How would Visa Direct envision serving them, and what might be some of the needs that you could address in terms of their business?
Yeah, so when we define micro businesses, we're talking about businesses even smaller than 1 million. Like you're talking about individual businesses, sole proprietors, contractors who have a revenue of less than $250,000, right? So for them, as I mentioned before, like the accessibility to cash is really important. They have to pay their bills, they have to invest in their business, and they have to just basically keep the lights on. It's very hard for them to do when they don't have a recurring cash stream. They are reliant on accessibility to that cash much more than any other type of SMBs. There are different types of use cases that come to light, like merchant settlement comes to mind as one of the use cases where these merchants are selling products either in person in their store or online, and then they need access to those proceeds in real time so that they can meet all those needs that I just mentioned. And then we also have other platforms, right? There are certain platforms, AP and AR platforms, who use Visa Direct, and they serve all types of clients. They serve micro businesses, they serve the larger businesses, and sometimes even the bigger businesses do have the need to send mass payments. Think of an event management company, right? An event management company is hiring these small contractors, and now they want to make sure that those contractors are paid on time so that their work gets done again and again and again. So that's how also we are seeing it manifesting. So you're right. These are like they behave like a consumer, like you would see in other consumer payments. Like if you're thinking of, let's say, just take an example of a gig economy worker, for instance, right? So it's just that type of a user base, but the accessibility to Visa Direct is coming from different channels, which is either merchant settlement or APR platforms.
So let's talk a little bit more deeply about the merchant settlement platform. Can you describe the tools that it provides, if we can look under the hood a little bit, how it all works?
So Visa Direct is a payment rails, right? So we not only serve merchant settlement, we serve plenty of other use cases, right? So we provide the pipes for those transactions to flow. So we work with a lot of payment facilitators who in turn work with these merchants, the small merchants, to accept on the acceptance side of payments, meaning they are the ones who go to these merchants and sign them up for getting access to that card-based payment so that they can now process card-based payments for their customers. So we work with those payment facilitators and third-party solution providers. And how Visa Direct gets used is because, at least in the US, if you think of like these small businesses also have small business cards. So at the end of the day, when they want the access to the cash, they can use that card to receive the payments in real time. And it's better for them because otherwise they'll have to wait for 3 to 5 days through ACH or pay more fees when it comes to wires. So we can solve for those problems. So essentially, how Visa Direct goes to the market is through these third-party providers and payment facilitators by offering our rates. That's how we enable merchant settlement use case today for these merchants.
Can you describe an example of how one of these merchant settlement tools, as the merchant gets access to the funds almost in real time or near instantly, how that might help them grow their business? So I can imagine a person, for example, who maybe needs to buy supplies that are perishable and can't wait to know how many they can afford to buy for the next day. Are there use cases that you can provide for us that gives us a real visual, as a really image of the solution or the way in which this solution helps them grow their business?
Yeah. Think of I'll give you an example, like fashion store, right? So somebody who runs a small fashion store, whether it's online or they have a storefront. They have a lot of operation costs that they have to worry about, right? They have to restock. They have to make sure if they have any employees, they have to make payments to those employees. And then they also have to invest in some growth initiatives, right? Because they might be doing some digital marketing and stuff. So they need access to that cash immediately. So customers will go to that storefront, buy products, and the merchant is expecting the proceeds of those sales, right? And those proceeds of sales typically are provided to them by their payment processor or payment facilitator who they're working with. Now, with this merchant settlement, within the merchant settlement use case, the Visa Direct can be embedded in that with that payment facilitator to provide that opportunity to the end customer, which is the merchant in this case, to receive the funds virtually instantly. So typically, these payment processors also provide some mechanism for these merchants to set the frequency at which they want to receive the payments and their payment methods and likewise. So that's where the Visa Direct solution gets plugged in, and these merchants are exposed to it and they end up using it. The second example is, now you mentioned perishable goods, right? So it's again, the overall concept is still the same. You need to meet your operational expenses. Now you can be like Bob, there's a bakery. Bob runs a bakery, right? So now he sells all the bakery products, all day long. Now he has to buy raw materials, right? Because that's how he keeps the business going. He has to also invest in digital marketing because that's how people know about his business. So now all of these things are dependent on that cash flow that he needs to receive. He may not have enough money sitting in his bank account to keep investing, right? So he's dependent on receiving those funds, and he cannot wait a week or two, or he would not be willing to pay a whole lot of fees to receive those funds faster. That's where Visa Direct comes into play. So they can now receive virtually instantly their funds using their card that they already have. So that's another example, right? But the concept is still the same. There is need to receive the cash, immediately, and there is a reason, because to cover their operational cost, they're reliant on that cash for. So that's what are the two examples.
But it's not just storefronts or sellers that need access to their capital or earnings as soon as possible. Oftentimes, suppliers on the receivables side also have long wait times or lack of control on how their funds are received. And they might want to work with those merchants since that's how they ultimately get their products out to the market. So how is Visa Direct helping on that side of things?
So you're spot on. On the receivable side, if you look at any of the platforms that are available today, not many provide that option, the choice to their customers that kind of caters to the needs that we just spoke about before, because the customer may want to receive the funds in a specific fashion, but they're limited to receiving the funds through only the choices that are available on that platform, which tend to be very traditional, like ACH, wire, checks. Again, they have their own problems. Either they are cost, prohibitive, or they are very, very slow, which do not necessarily serve the needs of the SMBs. And when you look at the cross border, then the problem even multiplies further, because then there's no transparency. So these accounts payable and receivables platforms are now also using Visa Direct, and they can enable the Visa Direct on the receive side, and extend their reach and allow their customers to receive the payments in whatever fashion they want. It's not only beneficial for the end customer, it's also a good differentiator for the platforms as well who offer these services, especially through Visa Direct, because we can do all three: account, card, and wallets, because now they can reach so many endpoints. And not even that, like if you go further, when we look at the entire spectrum of financial services that SMBs want, Visa Direct also comes into play even with the banks that offer SMB accounts, right? So there are SMB focused banks who offer checking accounts to the SMBs, or they extend loans to them. So Visa Direct can also come into play there, and we work with SMB banks to allow the movement of funds both in and out of those accounts in real time, and that again serves as a well-rounded experience for the SMB, and gives them that flexibility to manage their finances across all the financial services that they are availing, no matter what the platform is.
So what's next? What are some of the gaps or services that SMBs still need that they can't get yet, but that Visa Direct might be working on?
Yeah, I said, like, Visa Direct platform is ready, right? So we have our products. We have a lot of, not only the rails, which we just spoke about, not only the accounts, wallet, and card rails, but there are a lot of value-added services that come along with that. So which kind of makes it a good value proposition overall. We are actively working on building our reach. That's a constant, I would say, initiative for us. We always keep working towards expanding our network further and growing our reach to different endpoints. So that's continuing to happen. And when it comes to, as I said, different types of use cases. So we are not just looking at SMB from a merchant settlement or AP/AR standpoint. We are looking at SMB holistically. Yes, AP/AR platforms and merchant settlement tend to be the bigger use cases, but we are actively also looking at other financial services use cases that pertain to SMB. So I think as a platform, we can support all these use cases. We are working with a number of big players in this space, and trying to explore the market and grow the market further. What is helping us is this demand. What we know is that there's a whole lot of demand out there. There's a whole lot of opportunity out there which is unmet, and which is now more and more getting to a point where these platforms are also realizing and engaging with us for.
And what about the fintech area? Do you see some trends in terms of how fintechs are evolving to meet the needs of SMBs? Can you describe anything that you're looking forward to in the future in terms of the development of fintechs and how they might interact with the platform?
Yeah, so fintechs, they come in all shapes and sizes. So as it pertains to SMBs, you think of fintechs who are in this AP/AR space, who are sitting in the middle of the supplier and the buyer ecosystem, right? They're in the business of taking funds from the buyer and then making it available to the receiver in a fashion that they want to receive them. So we are seeing a lot of traction there. We are working with a number of such providers. And then we are also working with SMB-focused banks. So those banks either are in the neo-banking space, which kind of smells and feels like a fintech, or they are in many cases traditional banks also. So we are working to explore and exploit the opportunities there together so we can serve this vertical even better.
So what have we learned in season 2 of Money Travels? Let's let our guests speak for themselves.
Life just isn't about counting coins in a piggy bank anymore. Kids need to understand how money works when they can't physically see it. So whether that's buying things online, whether it's transferring money to friends, using banking apps, whatever that is, there are ways to bring that to life and make it meaningful and understandable for the different age groups.
We are trying to educate people and empower people to create new, good money habits. It's so important and right in the palm of your hands to get started as early as possible. I always tell people, if I waited until my kids were in college to tell them to eat vegetables, it would be way too late.
So we are not sending money actually physically across borders anymore. And this is what fintechs have done, in that they're actually moving money virtually. And that to me is a revolutionary concept. I think it's become faster, it's become cheaper, it's become cost efficient in ways we have never seen before.
Today, we are enabling card, account, wallet, those different types of credentials or payment instruments, both at a domestic and cross-border level. And the idea is for us to have the broadest reach possible to consumers across the globe.
What happens with these fraudsters is sometimes when people discover a loophole, they tend to share across all the other fraudsters. So when we get that information, we work and try to simulate those scenarios in the test environment. And then once you discover that there's a vulnerability, then we try and think on how we can close that loophole.
That's probably the hardest part of my job, finding the right balance between friction and fraud. And the way we do that is by having very robust risk assessments for each transaction. We build very sophisticated models that are using AI and other techniques to assess the risk of each transaction in real time. We're talking milliseconds.
So we have been at Visa using artificial intelligence before artificial intelligence was a thing, really looking at how we can improve the security of our global network. When you operate in over 200 countries and move almost $15 trillion of money yearly around the globe, and artificial intelligence really gives us that superpower to be able to identify that fraudulent needle in the haystack of legitimate activity that we want consumers and businesses to engage in.
I'm excited about this new field that is emerging as generative AI cybersecurity tools. If this technology is deployed wisely, we can stay safer online without using more and more people's personal data.
WeChat is such a all-consuming app that, like, when I'm in China, the app that I use the most is WeChat. When I pay, I pull my phone, I pull the app up, I show them my pay code, or I scan their pay code, and money comes out of my account and money goes into theirs.
Weixin app itself has a wide range of service and products provided. It's deeply integrated into people's day-to-day. And when we are talking about the day-to-day, then of course payment is inevitable because we need to chat with our friends and we also need to make all sorts of payments every day. Sending money to a loved one overseas or receiving money from a loved one is often a very deeply personal activity. It's not purely a transaction. I mean, there are emotions and relationships that are bundled together with that. And anything that we can do to sort of enhance that user experience, I believe is welcome.
You send money, you download our application, you fund the transaction using your Visa card, and you select the country to send money. The person doesn't have a financial instrument, a Visa debit to receive the funds. Instantly, one will be issued. A card will be issued in their phone, which will allow the funds to arrive in seconds.
We find that 1 in 3 unbanked adults don't have bank accounts because they don't have the necessary documentation or because the bank location is too far for them. So this is especially true in countries with large rural populations like Bolivia, Peru, Ecuador, Honduras, or Nicaragua, where people must travel for hours to get to a bank office or an agent to do a transaction in person.
Working on a cruise ship is quite unique. I mean, it's not a job for everyone. For me, particularly, personally, the benefits definitely outweigh the challenges. Meeting new people, traveling to new places, new cultures.
What we've done is we've built a world-class ability for that real person who's chosen to work on a ship to leave their country to work on a ship, oftentimes to support a full family back home. Come payday, we want to make sure it's easy to get money wherever they're from in the world.
It's a game changer for the crew. I mean, now they have the freedom to do whatever they want to, wherever they want to. They don't have to be bound to waiting until the cash to get home for them to use it. They can just use it all the time now.
Through this evolution in the industry, we have seen, a lot of firms prop up for trading, but we also have seen firms that have offered not only real-time transactions, but much tighter, what we call spread, which means that you're no longer paying up at the local exchange shop or at your local bank. You're getting access to much better exchange rates, which has made foreign exchange a much more accessible instrument.
In terms of real-time FX, this is an absolutely key component when we think about real-time financial services, real-time money movement that are underpinning and enabling the other real-time experiences that happen in the real or the digital worlds on top of us. So I like to think of Visa Direct as that single partner for banks, for fintechs, for governments, other FIs, financial institutions around the world. And really it is about allowing those transactions to travel through the most efficient routes.
Payments is the lifeblood, but payments should happen in the background. It's just purely a method to allow people to go and actually participate in that entertainment, in that pursuit.
I think the change sort of happened quite naturally from going to the bookmakers, going to the bookies on a Saturday to mobile betting, which would still be a big part of the matchday experience.
Getting your winnings is the most exciting, but if you win, then you want to access your winnings as soon as possible. We have recently seen quite a lot of innovation coming out of Visa that we can use next to the card acquiring piece that helps us build a better gaming experience for our customers that want to pay with card and want to access their winnings back to their card.
So a lot of the time that we've spent over the last year has really been thinking about how we can shorten that distance between where and how they're engaging with their audience and that purchase process. And it's kind of funny, all the talk about funnels and purchasing funnels. Turns out the most effective funnel is the one that doesn't actually exist at all. That if you can actually present the buying experience right there, the likelihood of them ultimately purchasing significantly increases.
I think a lot of creators today are trying to build businesses, and there's a trend that we see with larger creators starting to do that. But I think we'll also start to see a second wave of smaller creators build more niche businesses and use that to make this whole internet career a little bit easier.
What's exciting about the creative world and how much easier it's been to make content and make a living from it is all potential goals are possible. And so we see creators who absolutely want to continue producing the exact same content as what they're doing. And we've also seen creators who are like, wait, I have a huge business opportunity. Let me lean more into that or even produce my own goods that align well with my brand.
Ultimately, we see creators as businesses. And not just that, in the future, we believe all businesses will be creator driven because creators own distribution, and in business, it's all about your distribution. And so if we believe in this future where all businesses will be creator driven, we need to make sure the financial stack works for the kind of pioneering generation of today.
Thank you for listening to Money Travels. And thank you to our guests, Beth Beji and Jaspreet Singh. If you've enjoyed this episode, please subscribe or follow the show and leave us a review so that other people can find it. Until next time, I'm Indre Viscontas, and this has been Money Travels, presented by Visa.